Welcome to our continuing series of virtual voices focusing on the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Today, we have a group of Ukrainian students that are going to be talking to you about what is happening in Ukraine at the present time. I would want to mention to you that if you were here last week, when Odessa Ray, the producer of the film Navalny, talked about the Putin's mission of completely destroying Ukraine, which, by the way, started with Peter I. But in 1932-33, Stalin starved to death 3.5 plus Ukrainians, genocide known as Holodomor. Stalin sold the grain to the Europeans while starving Ukrainians, and then settled the area with Russians. Hopefully, the US and the EU will not allow the genocide of Ukrainians to continue this time. The four students from Ukraine are Yaroslav Mazniuk. He was born and lives in Kremenchuk. He is on his 5th year of studies for a master's degree in translation. He is planning to become a translator in Ukraine. Davyd Potapchyk. He's born in the Donetsk region. He lives and studies in Kremenchuk National University. He's on his 3rd year pursuing a degree in German languages and translation. And Yulia Zadorozhna, born in Drohobych, studies at the Ivan Franko National University in the Faculty of Journalism. Julia volunteers on the information front of the war and writes news about the war for the media. Over to you.
I have chosen to talk about the insufficient military aid for Ukraine. Ukraine has proven its readiness to fight and defeat the Russian army, but we do not have sufficient weapons. NATO is afraid to help us due to fear of a nuclear war, so Ukraine is defending itself alone, without the weapons it needs. Many people are dying in Ukraine. 2 died in Poland, and Moldova's infrastructure has been attacked. Part of the grain harvested in Ukraine to feed Africa has been stolen by Russia, and waves of refugees are going to Europe. To end this war, the West must provide Ukraine with sufficient military aid, and peace talks do not work with tyrants. This slide compares weapons possessed by Ukraine and Russia on February 24. Russia had significantly more artillery systems, both self-propelled and towed, 12 times more multiply launch rocket systems, and more heavy weapon systems of every type. Propaganda that Ukraine is planning to attack Russia and Belarus is Russia's false news. The truth is that this unprovoked war is an attack to destroy Ukraine and its people. This slide shows the number of weapons given by USA and EU over the last 10 months. As we can see on this slide, the USA has not yet provided Ukraine with the necessary types of heavy weapons, such as aircraft, tanks, infantry fighting vehicles. The support of our Western partners is not enough because we need hundreds or even thousands of heavy weapon systems to win. Since Russia is a powerful enemy, Ukraine requires a continued supply of weapons to retain its independence and democracy. On this slide, we can see how many weapons the US possesses and which number of them have been delivered to Ukraine. The US media, journalists, and officials seem to have forgotten about the Lend-Lease Act the day after it was signed. Biden was authorized to develop a delivery mechanism in July, 2 months after signing the law, but he still did not. The Ukrainian people are grateful for the military aid and humanitarian relief provided by our Western partners. We realize that without it, our situation would be much worse. However, our chances to wage the war more successfully is only possible if we were given the proper amount of weapons to stop Russia's attacks. This slide shows that Russia has left more heavy weapons during their flight from Ukraine than our Western partners supplied. Poland, Czech Republic, and North Macedonia has been helping Ukraine with tanks, and USA provides us with Humvees, but not infantry fighting vehicles, which would protect our troops. Our soldiers complain that their ammunition is running out, and Russians keep shelling us with rockets and artillery missiles. Our soldiers use around 6,000 artillery rounds, and Russia uses 50,000 ammunition per day. On October 4, Ukraine acquired 75,155 millimeter artillery rounds and 100 rounds of remote anti-armor mine systems, which is far too few to withstand Russia's constant attack. Since October 28, our soldiers have been under fire without the ability to respond. Almost nothing came in November. This is really frightening, and it greatly reduces the offensive potential of our army. Recently, Greg Hayes, the CEO of Raytheon Technologies, stated that USA supplies the Patriot air defense systems to 18 countries in the world. They would do a great job of protecting the Ukrainian sky from air targets, missiles, drones, and warplanes, but the US government allows them to deliver only the NASAMS, which are less effective air defense systems, due to his words. Raytheon Technologies is ready to deliver the Patriot systems as soon as the US government allows them, but they don't. I ask all residents of Europe and America to resurrect the Lend-Lease topic in mass media and help Ukraine get the weapons they need to protect themselves. I do not want more Ukrainians to die. Thousands of Ukrainians can be saved if they have the weapons to fight. Please help us. Thank you for your attention. Ну, це все.
То в нас вийшло 7 хвилин. Ну, вже як є. Тобто, більше матеріалу ти не бачиш, так?
Немає все. Та скоротили так.
Добре. Ну, я там ще, може, натягну, невеличкі, може, якісь паузи зроблю, але то 10 секунд максимум може буде. Добре. Все, то я, чекай, зараз я вже ставлю на стоп recording.
Greetings. The theme of my today's talk is the 2014 refugees perspective on the ongoing events. And I'm going to use my experience, since I'm going to be brief, to exemplify the issues that people like me encounter these days. I will split my topic into two parts. First is the dilemma of sorts of the 2014. By that, I mean the choice that was presented to the people of Donbass and how it was accepted and what was its results. And the two is the unforeseen consequences of this choice. Part one, I'll start right now. First of all, I must admit that the separatist takeover of my town of Kharkiv was swift and instant, and although some pro-Ukrainian protests have took place, they were quickly suppressed. Most of the people I knew tried to rather desperately grasp to whatever was left of the previous normalcy, with few exceptions willing to express their opinion on the ongoing events. Most of the people, therefore, were just dormant. They didn't think anything of the ongoing events. Later on, Russians have managed to sway the population of my city and the rest of the region by means of heavy propaganda and false flag attacks. My city was one of the cities struck, for example, with several multiple launch rocket system salvos that were mentioned before. Several rockets actually landed on my street, which actually forced me and my family to flee. That is the end of the first question, the first point. The second one is the unforeseen consequences of these choices. By that I mean that nobody 8 years ago expected to lose their nephew as a conscript storming Mariupol, wielding a Mosin rifle. Nobody expected the father of the said nephew to be captured near Kherson, on the outskirts of Kherson, and be starred in a video with POV questioning. I didn't expect my brother who is afflicted with cerebral palsy to be forced to hide from being conscripted because his mother, after she escaped the city, wanted to move back. Now, these rather horrific stories, in my opinion, and not in my opinion, subjectively horrific, afflict every single refugee who is currently situated on our territory, everywhere actually, and I wanted to highlight that. If you have any question, unless you have any questions, my talk is over.
Thank you very, very much, David. That was very illuminating, short and illuminating. So let's move on to Yulia Zadorozhna.
My name is Yulia. I am 18 years old and I was born and live in Ukraine. When I was 17, a full-scale war started by Russia on the territory of my country. Like every people, all my goals, dreams, the opportunity to live a peaceful life, develop and make plans for the future was stolen from me. Children have been robbed of a cloudless childhood, teenagers have a cheerful young, and young people have been robbed of the opportunity to develop their country and build a happy future in their country. Russia started the war in Ukraine back in 2014 when it occupied Crimea and part of Donbass. For most Ukrainians, this have become a part of adult life, but for me and my peers, Russian aggression contains almost all conscious life. And today I would like to raise the topic of young development in wartime conditions. War is certainly a traumatic thing for everyone. This is the place of losses, the threat of death, constant fear, injures the witness, and however, each age has its own unique challenges. Today's generation of teenagers is especially difficult because we are in a reality of war. Yes, war is not normal conditions and extraordinary load of the physique of even a healthy, mature person. It is also worth taking into account the fact that Ukrainian teenagers entered the war immediately after the quarantine restrictions. The previous 2 years were not easy and isolated in communication, studies, sport, which also affected psychological health. As soon as restrictions were eased, the war threw back into stress. With even greater power and even greater challenges. It's about falling behind in the educational process, pure assimilation of knowledge due to technical insecurity, or even skipping the educational program in those territories where active hostilities are still ongoing. And today I would like to raise the topic of young development in wartime conditions. Education is the first problem that I want to raise. Of course, the coronavirus pandemic in 2020 also made adjustment to our lives and directly to the educational process. But one cannot but agree that studying in work condition is another challenge. I am a student studying the Faculty of Journalism, and like no one else, I experienced all the difficulties of studying during the war. In March 2022, after the start of full-scale invention, we resumed distance learning. Perhaps it helped me to distract myself a little and not think about what was happening around me. But this is my story. But it is worth mentioning the peoples and students who fled from the territories where hostilities began. Mass evacuation, leaving home, even losing loved ones, how much they had to through. The opportunity for development and educational was taken away from them. And normal life was taken away from them. And of course, after some time, the learning process resumed in most of them. But it definitely cannot be called high quality. The second problem is the lack of communication. Some teenagers, even under normal conditions, sometimes have difficulties in communication. It can be difficult for them to make friends, and during the war, this process became especially difficult for many, even from adults, and some are constantly moving, so they may not feel the need to get attached to someone. And others have a hard time finding a common language with people in a new country, a common language when they stay at home. This is indeed a very big problem, and I felt it in part when I spent months abroad in connection with the war. The constant feeling of loneliness annoyed me and me more and every day. And also I was staying with my aunt in the condition very good, and the lack of communication forced me to return home, and the moment I returned home I felt the happiness. The next thing worth thinking about in the uncertainty of the future. Teenagers begin to think about what they also like and to do and who they want to be in the future. They also begin to prepare for their chosen profession, and young people are planning a quality startup and development of their own business. However, during the war, the planning horizon is significantly limited, since everything is constantly changing, but much of it does not depend on the will of a person. It can cause anxiety, feelings of powerlessness, and the thought also be about the meaning of life. It is very difficult to be reality when today a building can stand and tomorrow it will be destroyed by enemy missile, and the same with a human life. And the last thing, it cannot be forgotten the syndrome of delayed life. Today, many Ukrainians feel as if life stopped on the terrible February 24. They stop being aware of themselves in reality, more often think about how life will be in the future and enjoy these ideas. Of course, it applies to many categories of people, but it seems to me that it is most traumatically expanded in teenagers and young people. How can you remain mentally healthy when you understand that the times that seem to be the most active in your life, when all the possibilities are open to you, you have forced experience in the war condition? So somewhere there is a girl with a dream to enter the dream university, a boy with an unrealized startup, and a young couple who planned to open their own business and develop the country. Their dreams were stressed and in the instant. Russia decided to dispose of their lives in its own way. Now they all live in the fear of not being able to realize themselves, and none of them knows when they will be able to fulfill their dreams. Will bring big change in our life. It forces all of us to live an intense experience of collective trauma every day, from which we cannot hide. But in addition to this, a completely individual reaction to everything that we encounter at the time is formed. Most of the change provoked by the stressful conditions relate to the mental state. But those who are looking for answer for self-help become stronger for these trials. Yours, which includes more than one generation, remains one of the least protected categories. At the same time, she is the constant driver of change. Yes, now the conditions for a full life are not quite favorable. In our reality, we all learn to live and try to build a better life even during war. We learn to study by candlelight, to live in not entirely comfortable condition, but we strive for our happy future. Life throws us many challenges now, but we must overcome everything and bring victory closer each on our own front. Because it is precisely so, then I can read my speech calmly here at this webinar. In the east and south of Ukraine, we are protected by the armed force. Yesterday, 6th of December, was the Ukrainian Day of the Armed Force of Ukraine. For 8 years, our defenders have been protecting the lives of every Ukrainian. On behalf of all the young of our country, I want to say a big thanks, and despite a not simple condition, I promise that we as the future of our country will do everything to build a successful independent country with great opportunities and a happy future life after victory. Thank you all for attention.
Thank you very much, Julia. That was just an excellent presentation. Susie?
So we have some questions here from the audience. The first questions are for all students. So we'll go through 3 questions. Would love to hear from all of you to go around the horn. So the first one is, have you felt the negative consequences of war, any health problems, bad psychological state, or the appearance of new fears? So we can go in order. Yaroslav, over to you.
Yeah, when the war started, of course, we were frightened. We felt fear. We had bad dreams. I had bad dreams even before the war. How the Russian armies advance and occupy town by town, city by city. It was terrible. It was really terrible. But then God made them flee from some territories, and they occupied Kiev region. We all felt hope, and we all believed in our victory.
Thank you, Yaroslav. David, over to you.
Oh, well, I guess from the physical point of view, my sleep schedule is totally ruined. I cannot maintain it since the start of the war, and I was very anxious during the first month. That's about it for the issues I encountered.
Thank you for sharing. And Yulia?
On my mind, we can say that everything after the start of the war has changed. It's very definitely leave a mark in everyone's life, and we are more responsible to some extent.
Thank you for the honest and candid responses. The next question is, did you go abroad to escape the war? And if not, did you have a desire at all to leave Ukraine for a period of time to stay safe? We can go in order again, maybe start with Yaroslav.
If I'm going to leave the Ukraine, go abroad, I would definitely take all my family with me. I cannot leave anyone behind, but I know that we will not be allowed to leave Ukraine. There is some strange legislation in our country that don't allow men to leave Ukraine, to go abroad. So we're not available.
That makes sense. Thank you. David, how about you?
Well, I don't want to move abroad, but I was invited as a participant of the academic mobility program to Leicester. And if I actually manage to, I don't want to do it. And if I actually manage to cross the border, I will return, obviously. And until that moment, I am trying to make my family, the females of my family, to stay abroad as well, because I wouldn't be able to help them here.
That makes sense, and congratulations. Yulia, how about you?
Yes, as I said in my report, I was abroad in March 2022 at my aunt. Also, I did not want to leave Ukraine, but after a month I returned. I was feel uncomfortable there, and when I came back home, I was very happy.
Thank you for sharing. So since the outset of the war, what has kept you in high spirits and helped you maintain faith during these challenging times? Are there certain resources, what foods and other resources can cheer you up when you're stressed? So we can go in order again. Yaroslav, would you like to go first?
My mother and me cooked some dishes like pizza. And of course, the good news from the front about our armed forces defeating Russians, devastating them, the occupation of some crucial towns, like it was with Kherson or Kharkiv offensive. That's all.
Thank you for sharing. How about you, David? Do you have any recommended
Well,
ways?
During the war, I've picked up two habits that help me calm my nerves down. The first one is lifting weights, and the second one is cooking, like Yaroslav mentioned. If I were to recommend one, cooking would be the universal answer, I think. So there's that.
What do you like to cook?
Oh, I like to cook burritos mostly. I tried my head at them.
That sounds delicious.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for sharing. And then Yulia?
Of course, the start of war, it's a very big stress for everyone, and it had a little effect on our health as psychological, death, but it is probably worth saying that the beginning of the war left a big mark of the psychological level, and both negative and positive even. Maybe I became more conscious, more hardened. If we talk about food, nothing has changed now.
Thank you, Yulia. And we actually received another question for you. So how can teenagers who have left their hometowns be compensated, given maybe the language barriers and struggles that they may deal with when moving?
Thank you. I think that the start of war in not normal conditions, and if we talk about what load on the psychic of even healthy and mature person, it is very big stress. Then very have big stress is immediately after the quarantine our stress, and of course it's very big problem for everyone on their psychical health.
That makes sense. Thank you. We received about 10 or 12 different questions related to Russian propaganda. So would like to go around and hear from all of your perspectives. The first question is, given the existence of propaganda, what would you advise people who don't have media and journalism experience so that they can distinguish fake news from the truth? And how can you kind of maybe ignore this type of information that's being fed to the public? So we'll start with you, Yaroslav. Do you have any thoughts on this?
Well, if you live in Russia, just turn off your television and never turn it on, or just change the channels, some other connect to other satellites. Maybe if you have someone who lives abroad, not within Russia, then he can tell you the truth, what actually is happening. Well, I don't know what else.
Thank you. That's useful. How about you, David? Any other
I think
advice?
I'm sorry, I've interrupted you. I think adopting critical thinking would be a good advice, because if you ask yourself question, why do I hear what is being told to me? Why do people tell me this? It's always gives you a refresher and allows you to gain a new insight on the topic.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. You know, you should always ask yourself, does this make sense when you're reading any information? How about you, Yulia?
We all know that Russia's war against Ukraine has two sides, one of which is informational, and basic rules for protecting is the information front. It's don't waste your time arranging with bots. They are doing their work for which they are paid, and some of the account are automatically generation disinformation using intelligence. And second is the focus energy on creating posts on social networks about the real state of affairs, especially for Russians, since access to truthful information is almost completely limited there, and support the spirit of army, write words of thanks for Ukrainians, and do not forget to complain about information terrorists.
Very helpful, thank you. So during Valeria's presentation, she talked about fake news related to Holodomor. In your opinion, is it important that most countries recognize that this was in fact a genocide against Ukrainians? Yaroslav, would you like to go first?
So yeah, recognizing Holodomor is the first step of recognizing the new genocide of this year, being committed by Russian Federation at that moment, even as we speak. Maybe it will make them think more about sufficient weapon supply also. This cannot be allowed.
David, how about you?
No, I'm completely on the same board as Yaroslav. I don't even have something to add in this regard.
And Yulia, anything to add, or do you agree?
Maybe to do the fix, you need to file campaigns about violation of the rules with the administration of social network when it comes to a popular platform with a large audience, blocking the resource for the at least a few days.
Thank you for sharing. And the next question is, why do you think Russia introduces propaganda? Do you think Russians themselves believe this news to be fake? Yaroslav, would you like to go first?
I know many, maybe lots of Russians recognize that some of the news they receive are fake. Probably they recognize that this word is fake, but they are imperialists on nature. They want to kill us, kill every nation that doesn't that do not want to be under their rule, and they want to claim territories more and more and more, and they threaten to all the world with nuclear weapon. This is just their nature.
David?
I think the quote from Solzhenitsyn's Gulag Archipelago would be a good one. It goes as, we know they're lying, they know we know they're lying, and we know they know that we know that they're lying. They simply don't care. They are dormant. They believe like cattle. They go on for as long as possible. So there's nothing that can be done to them in media regard. We just have to win this conflict militarily.
Yulia?
No, first of all, fakes and disinformation constantly appear on the internet, which is one of the signs of the hybrid war that the Russia Federation is waging against Ukraine for the 9th year. And since July 2022, the update cyberpolice platform RIA has been operating in Ukraine. With it helps subscribers block fakes, so the Telegram channel with a subscribes by almost 200,000 people.
This life experience that you're currently dealing with has made you stronger, impacted you, and opened your eyes in a more positive way, where you think, once this war is finally over, what lessons are you taking with you to the next phase of your life? Yaroslav, can you please go first?
We realized that we are Ukrainians, and that a Ukrainian is a man of freedom, a man of a strong will and strong heart. And all of us have learned how to praise what we have, because the day after we can lose everything, our life, our parents, our friends, everything.
David?
Well, two things that I have to, the war taught me two things. That first of all, that I have to plan long-term longer, and that if there's no Russians, there won't be any Russophobia for them to complain about. That's it.
Yulia?
For the first, we can safely say that everything after the start war has changed, but the most global is probably my thinking and my worldview, and such a difficult event will definitely leave a mark in everyone's life, and I become more conscious and also politically more responsible to some extent, and of course I began to prioritize the people around me more, even the smallest thing, and basically everything. Yeah, I have, and we all have.
Closing remarks as we wrap up our Q&A that you'd like to share with our audience?
I would advise, I would advise everyone here to not try to grasp for normalcy. It will never go back to norm, so you have to act accordingly.
Thank you very, very much for your presentations. I really appreciate them. and I'm sure that the audience has learned a lot from your perspectives. Thank you, Susie, for your hosting, and I wish you all a very, very good, well, should I say, a very, very peaceful week, and hopefully a peaceful future. Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Thank you.